Wes Streeting, Labour's shadow health secretary, is under fire after expressing sympathy for a group linked to anti-trans conversion practices. In an interview dating back to 2024, Streeting stated, having met with Bayswater parents, I think that that's been I'd go so far as to say, traumatic experience for some of those families, and that's really, really stuck with me. Now, this is not some neutral support groups. Let's just preface that. Bayswater members have been exposed for encouraging abusive behaviour, like punishing their children for expressing their gender identity or sexuality. And yet, Streeting chose to validate their concerns instead of standing clearly with the young people who are being harmed. For those of you that don't know, Bayswater members have openly said their actions could be seen as abusive. In one instance, a parent sarcastically remarked, "Yeah, we are abusive," in response to discussions about their methods. Another added, "One day they may thank us for that quote unquote abuse." So, the backlash from LGBTQ activists was swift and understandably so. Campaigners like Katie Montgomery accused Streeting, rightly, of betraying trans youth, pointing out that conversion therapy is condemned as abusive by every major human rights body. But this isn't a one-off. I think it fits into a larger pattern of Labour retreating on LGBTQ plus rights under Keir Starmer's leadership. Labour has walked back its support for gender self-ID, gone quiet on promised reforms to the Gender Recognition Act, and responded weakly to the EHRC's increasingly anti-trans positions. Promises made in opposition have been quietly dropped once in government. COG, Wes Streeting is just back at it again. I think he's always on our screens with his face, but his sympathy for a group tied to conversion therapy isn't just a misstep. It's clearly a symptom of a party shrinking from its own supposed values, right? I mean, what message does it send when a Labour shadow minister meets with and validates people practicing conversion therapy on trans kids?
With regards to Labour, the problem is that they're very soon going to have the sort of like political effect of going to a dance class stinking of BO, in that no one is going to want to associate with them. Like nobody. Like who is this winning over? Like reform voters aren't convinced by this. Reform voters are going, no, why would I like you can be anti-trans all you like, but I'm just gonna vote for Nigel Farage because he's very clearly more anti-trans than you are. The same goes for the anti-immigration shit, by the way. It's not winning anyone over. The people, by the way, the people who are in Bayswater comment section have already been told that Keir Starmer believes that that you can transition transition a 2-year-old from a male to a female, and they'll do all of the surgery on that little 2-year-old. Like they don't know, they don't care. Keir Starmer can change his position, like, and he can become like the most hardline anti-trans person now. It makes no difference to them, absolutely none. So what effect does it have on the rest of the political spectrum? Well, a lot of people who like don't know enough about trans issues would be like, well, this is kind of weird. What's this about? And they're going to look to their left and see all of the people on the left going, we're not going to associate with Labour anymore. We, reform. Obviously, the reform voters aren't going to. Conservative voters, there's not any of those left anymore. But like the reform voters, former Conservative voters, they're not voting for them. The left aren't voting for them. The centre are going to look at them and go, well, we're going to vote Lib Dem because Labour don't stand a chance anymore. That's the political effect. As to like the Bayswater stuff, there is a really interesting book, which I hate read, because it's a horrible book, but it is very interesting, called Irreversible Damage, by a loathsome journalist called Abigail Schreier. Sorry, a loathsome journalist, in my opinion. I don't want to accuse her of being a journalist. Jesus. I don't like just a foul person, in my opinion. But basically, Irreversible Damage follows the same premise as a lot of the Bayswater group does. They advocate for exploratory therapy, conversion therapy. Basically, you should explore, by which a lot of the times they mean that the child should be punished for gender non-conforming systems, gender non-conforming systems, gender non-conforming behaviours. Excuse me. But also, it's very telling reading through the stories. because the parents basically fit into a couple of categories. The first and least common category is the outright transphobic parent, the one who is like, yeah, I try to deter this behavior by taking their phone away and burning all their stuff, and like just horrible people. Obviously, none of them admit to physical abuse, but we know that does go on. We know that people physically abuse their children for being LGBT, but in this case, we're focusing on trans people. And the more common thing in the book, the more common theme in the book, and you do have to read into it carefully, is parents who instilled no sense of trust in their kids. And of course, you have to read the context into it, because according to Schreier, these kids just like they hit 18, 20, they discovered gender ideology, and suddenly, bam, they were trans, and their parents would never have seen it coming. But of course, that's not what's gone on there, and it's really obvious to somebody who like reads it critically, reads it from the perspective of somebody who's like sympathetic to trans people and listens to trans people's stories, that these are parents who gave their children like no confidence that they could put their trust in them. And they do things like they'll talk about how they discovered all of this stuff because their son, who's actually their daughter, of course, because it's a trans girl they're talking about, but they refer to them as their son, left their computer open with Facebook there, and so they decide to read all their Facebook messages. And it's just like the violation of your privacy that is just like so normalized within these texts, and the assumption that you're doing nothing wrong by trying to isolate people from their friends, from their social circles, where they are accepted, by destroying their clothes. Like, there's a lot going on there that I think is wrong, I think is abusive, and I have to say this is my opinion. And of course, Bayswater is another reflection of this same shitty, I own my kids can't be trans because I've got a different idea of what they should be in my head. It's another reflection of that, in my opinion.
Well, in my opinion too, that was really great, but also it is abuse. Like you said, it's the violation of recognizing or validating a child, and the inability to recognize that their worldview is somewhat skewed, in my opinion. So I do think that when we still hear of these things happening and sympathy being given to organizations that are riddled with pretty egregious tactics to kind of like get the gay out, or like all of this sort of stuff, as though it's some sort of I don't know, thing that you can like just rid yourself of quite easily, is so asinine to me, and it's just completely egregious in nature. And I think when we pivot this back to Labour, there's clearly a lack of moral clarity. What I've found really frustrating with this Labour government is this constant back and forth with their stance on certain topics. It's like, say what they want to hear so that I can just get into power, and then I'm just going to backpedal on quite a few things. And we've got Starmer, who just wants to, I think, appease those who exist on the right by saying things that they've been trying to say for years, but obviously it's coming from a place of I don't know, not being able to listen to other people's lived experiences, not being able to recognize that there are people who have lived experiences different to themselves. So I don't know, it's a really, really weird time. But I also think that children like get to navigate this world and should be able to do so without fear of being ostracized for doing so. And I find that there is this really, really weird culture of shame that surrounds kids just trying to be kids and kids just trying to explore who they are. Like the way that you and I are, Cog, in terms of our personalities, in terms of our identities, has been shaped obviously by our experiences, but intrinsically it's who we are as well. And I think that needs to be validated and recognised.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.